Welcome to what is going to be Drunk Storytime with Quefish. I am Quefish. I'm tired. I've been packing and moving and lifting and moving stuff that I really have no business doing manual labor. But I'm going to read some stories. So, I have cracked open some strawberry Irish cream, and I'm gonna get started on it. All of my fancy glassware has been packed, so you get to see my beautiful. This is cup I got from Epcot in China when I had some delicious kung fu punch. So. Kind of tastes like strawberry Nestle Quick, like strawberry milk, that has a really bad attitude. So I'm probably gonna read a couple of my my little crack fic offerings. So so I'm gonna get started on this, and I'll be back shortly with some drunk stories. Hello. So I've had a little bit. Could have had more. Probably should have had less. I'm having a little bit more anyway. So I think I'm good to go. So part of one of the series that I have to keep all of my ridiculousness in one place is the when an angel and a demon get silly. So I'm gonna just be kind of reading from those. So I'm gonna start with divorce court, but first I'm gonna turn off the volume on my computer because it goes bing and bong a lot. All right, so I'm only reading mine today, so they're all story de la Quefish. This is Divorce Court Live. Summary is Crowley takes Aziraphale to divorce court. Mature rating for safety due to terrible stick figure art, not because of the story content. Miss Dorothy Hickenbottom, Dot to her friends, sat down to enjoy a nice afternoon of television as she knitted. She made sure her fancy water bottle was close, clicked the remote, and picked up the sweater she had been working on as the telly turned on. She wasn't much for the reality shows that put people on islands or toss them around the world solving puzzles, but she did like the courtroom shows. People could be so ridiculous. Today, on Divorce Court Live. Dot got a little grin. This show was always good for a laugh, especially live. No chance to edit out the good bits. She watched as a blonde, kindly-looking older gentleman walked into the court, and she immediately decided that he was the wronged party. Just a second. Okay, I'm back. Nothing happened. Nothing's wrong or anything. But I just got the craziest sense of deja vu. And I was like, did I re-record this one at some point? So I had to go and I went and I checked YouTube. No, I have not. So I'm going to pick it back up. She watched Dorothy Hickenbottom, watched as a blonde, kindly-looking older gentleman walked into the court, and she immediately decided that he is the wrong party. He looked too innocent and corruptible in his neutral-toned suit, looking like a librarian or something. He made his way to one of the little podiums and stood with a straight posture, patiently waiting. The doors opened again, and Dot watched as a red-haired man in sunglasses with more swagger than sense sauntered in. Was he a rock star or a celebrity of some sort? Maybe he was just late to the show, and the older gentleman's soon-to-be ex was just behind. Nope. The redhead made his way to the second podium and looked at the blonde with a weird, condescending smile. Once they were in place, Judge Badcrumble appeared and took her seat behind the bench. She picked up the papers in front of her. I'm really getting deja vu. Today we have the case of Mr. Asfell. Excuse me, Judge Badcrumble. Those are initials. A.Z. Fell, if you please. Right. We have the case of Mr. A.Z. Fell and Mr. Anthony J. Crowley. They have... Oh, really? Crowley, are you still using the J? I like it. Be quiet. A loud and obnoxious cough interrupted as they fell silent. The judge looks over her glasses at each of them in turn before looking back to the papers. Thank you, gentlemen. Now, the case of Mr. A.Z. Fell and Mr. Anthony J. Crowley. Mr. Crowley is citing irreconcilable differences, and Mr. Fell claims that... Is this for real? Mr. claims that, quote, "My darling Crowley certainly knew what he was getting into. This is simply one of my sweetheart's tantrums. May I go home now? I'd like to bake some cookies for my..." I'm not saying that out loud. End quote. Judge Badcrumble looked up at them again, Mr. Fell giving a small wiggle, and looked at Crowley with a tight smile. Really, Angel? That's what you're going with? You couldn't even... The redhead gave a small start and looked back to the judge, who was looking at him sternly. Right. Well, as you are the person who filed the petition, we will start with you, Mr. Crowley. Please describe what you consider to be irreconcilable differences. Right. Well, let's start off with tartan. He groaned out the word as the blonde scoffed. Tartan. Judge Badcrumble looked at him dryly before looking at Mr. Fell. It was just a tie so far as she could tell. Not that tartan was really a basis for divorce as far as she was concerned anyway. Yep, it's everywhere. Tie, socks, throw pillows, the duvet, biscuit tins. Have you ever seen a full vanity set in tartan, Judge? I have. Soap dispensers, toothbrush holders, that little toothpaste squeezy thing you use when the tube is almost empty. He wore it at our wedding. Here he pulled out a wallet and flipped it open. A fold-out photo holder unraveled, and a plethora of photos of his husband stared at the judge as he pulled out one to hand to the bailiff. The redhead looked at the bailiff very seriously. I'll want that back in the same condition I gave it to you. The bailiff nodded and brought the photo to Judge Badcrumble, who gave it a thorough look. Mr. Crowley, I hardly think that a matching tie and pocket square and tartan is excessive. She handed it back for the bailiff to return. Mr. Crowley held his hand out for the photo. To be honest, neither did I. But what was underneath this suit was unreal. I mean, his arse looks nice either way, but that's enough, Mr. Crowley. I'm sure the courtroom doesn't need to hear that. The courtroom chuckled on cue as Dot grumbled that she wanted to hear it. This was the best episode she'd ever seen. Judge Badcrumble took a deep breath. All right, moving on from the tartan. Never thought I'd say that. Can you cite any other issues, Mr. Crowley? Well, I mean, he always has his nose in a book. I own a bookshop, dear. Shut it! I'm talking. My turn, right? He looked up at Judge Badcrumble for confirmation. He is correct, Mr. Fell. Please hold your comments until I ask. Mr. Fell nodded, frowning. Please continue, Mr. Crowley. Nose in a book, said that one. Oh, right. We don't go out anymore. We used to go to the park, feed ducks, dinners, desserts, diners, the Ritz. The audience oohed at the mention of the Ritz, and Mr. Crowley turned to address them, his arms flailing dramatically. That's my point. Used to do anything and everything. Now it's either all reading books or he keeps me in bed till I can't walk straight. Not that I do that anyway, but it would be nice to be able to, after Judge Badcrumble had been attempting to redirect his attention to her in increasing volume. But at this, she roared at him. Mr. Crowley! His head snapped around to look back at her. That is quite enough of that. You'll not be commenting on anything of a physically intimate nature again. Is that understood? But what if it's an irreconcilable difference? The redhead practically whined. If it truly pertains to your petition, you may write it down and I will read it myself. She nodded to the bailiff, who turned for paper and pen. I swear I've read this before. Nah, it's probably a bad idea. Don't really write much. All I do is draw pictures, and pretty sure you'd yell at me for that. Judge Badcrumble's face crunched in, trying not to see whatever it was that he would have drawn. The judge took off her glasses, rubbed her eyes and her temples. She needed a drink after this. Fine. Duly noted. I appreciate your discretion. She pretended not to notice that he gave her a wink and finger guns. She kept her hands over her forehead, rubbing in small circles. Is there anything else? Yep. How about cutesy nicknames? Crowley, you're being absurd. You know very well that I could do much worse than I do, in so many languages. I simply can't believe that you'd hold my verbal affection as an undesirable aspect of our relationship. Judge Badcrumble, I do hope that you are starting to see my side of why this is certainly not your turn yet, Angel. She didn't say. Mr. Crowley smirked at the blonde's scowl. Judge Badcrumble sighed again before putting on her glasses and starting to look through the paperwork again. Mr. Crowley is technically correct, Mr. Fell, but I'd like to go against the standard for now. Do you have anything you'd like to say? Well, now that you mention it, and of course appreciating that I am now permitted to speak up. No, I can't really think of anything I'd like to add at this moment. Mr. Fell smiled sweetly at the judge, who had now allowed her head to fall to the bench with an audible thunk as she mentally catalogued her liquor cabinet. Mr. Crowley snickered quietly. That's the bastard I know and love. Mr. Fell looked over with just the most adoring smile Dot had ever seen on a person. My dear, I do love you so. I didn't realize you'd been feeling so neglected. I suppose I have been driven to distraction with my recent acquisitions. Could I tempt you to supper, my dear? I believe I may be able to find a reservation to fit your fancy this evening. Mr. Fell held out his hand to Mr. Crowley. Judge Badcrumble was ignoring them at the moment. She picked up her head, rubbing at the red spot where she'd hit the desk, confusedly going through the small stack of paperwork regarding the case. Mr. Crowley reached out and took Mr. Fell's hand, and the gallery of the courtroom verbally swooned over the gesture and the smiles on the two men. Right, this is all well and good. Congratulations on not getting married today. Divorced today. Sorry. But just as a point of process, you neglected to include your marriage certificate in your petition, Mr. Crowley. Judge Badcrumble looked up, a number of papers in her hands, still searching. Oh, I'd be happy to explain that, Judge Badcrumble. We don't have one. Mr. Fell smiled beatifically at his husband, whose smirk could be called sappy in return. Judge Badcrumble stopped moving, and the gallery held its breath. You what now? Yeah, don't have one. Just had a wedding. Why? Judge Badcrumble clenched her teeth, forcing the words out better than any ventriloquist Dot had ever seen. Are you telling me you came into my courtroom to get divorced despite not being married? The two men looked at each other and then looked back at her, nodding. Get out of my courtroom! The two men, the bailiffs, the gallery, and Dot at home all jumped, startled at the bellowing, and watched as Judge Bad crumble through all the papers in the air before storming off the bench to the side door. More yelling could be heard about exactly how little the judge cared about commercials and runtime, and her plans to drink herself into oblivion tonight. The two men shrugged at each other before walking out of the courtroom. The redhead had slung his arm around his husband's shoulders and pulled him in to kiss the top of his head. Where to, Angel? Oh, I believe we may be able to find a table at the Ritz, if that's to your liking, my love. The shorter man wrapped his arm around his husband's slim waist. Mr. Crowley made a happy sound and kissed the blonde's head again as the doors closed behind them. Dot blinked at her telly and then looked down at the knitting that she'd abandoned ages ago. She jumped as her mobile trilled next to her. Hickenbottom. Oh my goodness. Betty, I did. Can you believe that? Not even married. Do you think it's on demand yet? Well, yes, I can pull out the old VCR out of the closet. Why? You what? Blessed stars, yes, I'll put the kettle on. See you soon. Dot put the kettle on and then began putting together a tray of snacks as she began calling some of the other local ladies. Hello, dear, it's Dot. I did, and now Betty's coming over. She recorded it, and we are going to watch it again. Of course, that's why I'm calling. Bring Billy and Judy, too. Thus, a group of older ladies sat, not knitting at all, enjoying the drama again. So, one person commented wondering what kind of drawings that Crowley might do, whether or not they would be incredibly good, like, anatomically accurate, I guess, or whether they would be like crappy drawings. And my response was, oh, they would totally be crappy drawings. I don't even know if this is gonna work. Yeah, bing, there's my terrible sex stick figures. I wasn't even drunk when I drew them, but they make me laugh so much. They're just not right. I'll be back. Just a minute. I'm back. Sorry, I literally just had to go through and look at all of the recordings that I've made to make sure that I hadn't recorded and posted Divorce Court, because oh my god, the deja vu was it was severe. However, we're working up to almost 20 minutes at this point, so I'm gonna do euphemisms, and then I'm gonna call it quits on this video. So probably should have started with this one because I know it's funnier. Sorry. So, euphemisms. I rated this as mature because it refers to sexual acts, not because it actually, it doesn't really describe them actively, but it refers to sexual acts, so that's why I put this at mature. Okay, euphemisms. Summary. Aziraphale has his limits on what he allows in the bedroom. Oh, come on, Angel, it just slipped out. I'm sorry. I believe that I have made my position on this quite clear a number of times. Yes, you have. It was a mistake. Come back to bed. I have taken no issue with so many of your more creative phrases and bedroom vocabulary, but there is a line. Yes, I know. I've crossed it. Won't happen again. Please come back to bed. I've put my mouth on your cock. I've played with your prick and even ridden on your dick. I've heard you talk about your tallywhacker. You've described fondling your knob. You've invited me to ride the D-line train. Crowley had been blushing harder and harder, and eventually covered his face, although it's unclear if that was out of embarrassment or trying to hide laughter. You've asked me to lick your... Good Lord. Your angel bait. I've kissed your loved wand. Your love wand after you watched that Harry Potter film series. A definite snicker erupted from the demon. You've thankfully only used Zira Pleasa once. Crowley winced, remembering the holy smack that had sent him crashing against the wall. I've no idea why you ever thought fuckstick or womdinger was a good idea. Crowley shrugged with a look that expressed even he wasn't sure where those came from. But damn it, Crowley, I refuse, utterly and completely, to have anything to do with Mr. Boopsy the sex snake. God, I hope everybody else got... I was crying as I was writing that one. It was so funny to me. So, thank you for watching Drunk Story Time with Quefish. I may make another one. I might lead with a funnier one. God, I swear I've read that one before. Anyway,